Hi, welcome to the Open Space with Aura. If you enjoyed this channel, please subscribe. I would say a few words. First of all, Happy New Year. And hopefully this year will bring a little bit more joy, a little bit more humor, a little bit more laughter to our lives. And another thing, you might wonder why this channel sometimes goes silent for a while, and then there is some conversation suddenly posted. I would say this channel operates on the principle of randomness. Whenever I'm inspired, whenever I'm in the mood, and most importantly, whenever I meet fascinating people that I feel an urge to talk to, here you go, the recording, the conversation happens. And today is the case. I would call it, it takes three to tango. And there are two people that I'm humbled to have conversation with. Why I'm humbled? Because they are embodiment of what courage means in today's society. Two courageous persons, Rima and Timothy. And Tim, it's your second time, right, on this channel. And Rima, it's practically a blind date. We recently met literally like 5 minutes before starting recording. Yes. And we met thanks to Tim, because your act of courage in supporting Tim, you wrote something, despite that Tim is a musician and you're a psychologist, you will introduce yourself in a couple of moments, but you lended a hand, immediately a hand of support to Tim. And but I'm not going to tell the story, but I admire your courage, and you are the source of, the two of you are the source of inspiration for me. And with that, I would like you to say a few words to our viewers, who you are.
And who is starting?
Rima, why don't
Myself,
you?
okay.
Yeah.
Well, I am the one who is honored to be on your show, Aura. Thank you for the invitation and wonderful meeting before we started. Well, Dr. Jackson, Timothy, it's an honor for me. So for sure, I would support him, because he is an inspiration. His career, what he have done, everything, and what is happening to him is just unacceptable, shocking. So I'm not going to talk about his story, but just say why Bambi, the name, the blog, my personal blog, Bambi's Afkar, had a post on Dr. Jackson. So my name is Rima Azar. I'm an associate professor of health psychology at Mount Allison University in Sackville, New Brunswick. So that's in Atlantic Canada. I am back to campus, back to teaching 2 courses, but that happened after being suspended without pay for 7 months and banned from campus for 7 months because of my personal blog. Where I express some opinions that perhaps some people did not like at one point or another. So it's about social issues in Canada, abroad, in Lebanon a lot, maybe half of the posts are in Lebanon. So basically that's who I am. Thank you.
And my name is Timothy Jackson, and I'm a professor of music theory at the University of North Texas, which is near Dallas, Texas. My case is somewhat different from Rima's, but the principles are the same for which I'm fighting. And that is, I believe very strongly that professors have a responsibility to teach and proclaim basic factual truth. I'm not talking about issues where there's interpretation and, let's say, open to dispute, because there are such issues, but there are certain basic facts that concern, let's say, historical biography, what people believed, what they didn't believe, those kinds of things. And I have really placed my whole career and my life, my personal life, my family's life, in the balance to defend the right of a professor to inform people about the truth. And so I feel that we professors really have a responsibility in today's society to defend what we think is the factual truth. And I've also paid a heavy price, not as heavy perhaps in certain ways as Rima has, but in other ways, yes, very heavy price. And I've been fighting it both from a legal and scholarly perspective. So that's who I am. I should add that I grew up in Halifax, Nova Scotia, which is adjacent to New Brunswick. And in my last year of high school, I actually took some music courses at Dalhousie University and really enjoyed those courses. I took a music history course with the professor who was then teaching it, and he and I developed a very close relationship, and things that he taught me actually stayed with me for many, many years. And I think about him from time to time. So my heart, still part of my heart is in Nova Scotia and Canada. I am a Canadian citizen. My father was a professor at Technical University of Nova Scotia. He was a professor of architecture there for many, many years. And my parents are both buried in the Orthodox Jewish cemetery in Halifax, Nova Scotia. So I have a long, long connection with Halifax. Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you, Tim. I just want to add, you said, and that's who I am. Both of you continue to be who you are.
Right.
Don't get off this path, and path is difficult and thorny. And I would like to build on what Tim said. Tim, you mentioned that it's our responsibility to expose students to certain historical truths. I also would say that it's our responsibility not to deprive, I would reframe it, not to deprive students of something that they have no other place to discover other than university. So it's two-sided problem, and I want to bring here the self-censorship that I caught myself not recently, probably a few years ago, that I start not censoring myself, but I have an idea of, oh, maybe I should not mention that. Maybe I should not say that. And it was incredibly irritating for me to learn about me. So, and I started tracking myself. Why am I doing this? What's around me that causing me to do that? And I would like to ask you if you experienced any, I know the choices you made, right? The brave choices, but if you experience some sort of anxiety, history of building up anxiety prior to current, let's say last year, but years before, something that was building up that would make you feel like you depriving yourself of your expression, self-expression, and depriving yourself of sharing fully your expertise with the students out of censorship. And even if it's imaginary, based on imaginary fears, but still it's a fear, right? And I would like to ask Rima, because you're a psychologist, if you traced something within yourself as a mentor, as a teacher, as a professor.
A very interesting question. Maybe I've been lucky thus far. I haven't, in relation to what I write on the personal blog. Maybe that's my way of expressing it there, because my area doesn't lend itself to this. So I talk about the biopsychosocial model of stress, talk about health diseases, the children with complex care needs, resilient stress. So far, so far not, but I can see it. I can see it. Yes, of course. I see it in others. I hear it from students anonymously writing, some maybe from my institution, maybe from others, because I have now a lot of people writing, high school students from the States today, actually. So they say that they are self-censoring and they are submitting essays or assignments, not writing what they do think, like the evidence that they are reading. We're talking about truth, about data evidence. They are bringing some ideologies that they do not really endorse or believe, and some are saying that. It's scary, I find, very scary.
So it's like both sides self-censoring. Some of us have at least a thought of withholding certain information, and on the other side, students, whether high schools or college students, also self-censoring. So it's like this vicious cycle of self-censoring, which does not promote exchange and exploration, and definitely does not lead to any discovery. And these are the big words in a mission of each university, I believe, right?
Right.
Tim, what is your observation?
Well, maybe I suffered from naivete. That's what some of my students felt, I think. Not all of them, though, but some. Because maybe they thought that I wasn't sensitive enough to the social and political environment. But what I think is this, that there should be room in scholarly circles and elsewhere for disagreements and for discussion and dialectic. And at the end of the day, historically, the truth tends to be the kind of thing that rises to the top out of all of these interactions and discussions. So my naive, if you want to put it in quotation marks, my naive belief was that as long as people get to have their say, there can be a real debate, and eventually the truth will come out one way or the other. But in my case, what happened was that the administration of the university put its heavy thumb on the scales and said, this is right, and what you're doing is wrong. You see, in other words, the administration intervened in an academic disagreement and in a debate between scholars about what was historically accurate and what wasn't. And that, I think, marked the crossing of a Rubicon, because in a free society, in a democratic society, and in a humanistic society, the administration of a university should not intervene. And in fact, our college and university charter states quite explicitly that professors are encouraged to exercise their expert opinions on subjects in which they actually know something about, right? And that even if it's controversial, and the word controversial appears in the statute, that is protected speech, and that professors should be allowed to do that. I would even argue more that the reason for tenure is to allow professors to do just that, to, in a certain sense, speak truth to power, all right? And to dissent against popular and widely held beliefs, and to suggest ways in which those beliefs might be false. That's an important role of a professor, and that's what tenure is supposed to do. It's not supposed to protect tenured professors from, teaching and being self-critical or going to the beach and putting their feet up for years and doing nothing. That's not the point. The point is to protect professors so that they can be Socratic in their investigations, so that they can weigh all the facts And they should be deliberative, and never take decisions in haste or under emotional duress. And I think some of my colleagues, unfortunately, not only at my university, but elsewhere, forgot that. And they were very rash, and they did things that professors should not do, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. That's the problem. They wanted to cancel somebody who didn't agree with them. And you see, it's also like what the administration tried to do was to cancel me. You see, that's the problem. And the last time that happened, to my knowledge, was never here in America. We don't have a tradition of that here, but in Europe it's happened. In the Soviet Union it happened, and in Nazi Germany it happened. That the government and the administration interfered in the academic discourse and forced out all professors who didn't toe the party line, whether it was left or right, didn't make any difference. And that's what we're facing right now in America and in Canada, in England, in France, Germany, lesser degree in European places, but certainly here in America, and I fear in Canada too, from what I see.
I want to add, I have somewhat crude analogy. Can we imagine if administration of the hospital will come into the surgery room where surgeon and his team of nurses and assistants will about to perform a difficult procedure on the body of a patient, and administration of the hospital will start dictating the surgeon how to perform procedure. It's impossible. And my question here, I don't know to whom, just open question. Why, how it's shaped that way that administration feel it has a right to invade the sacred territory of teaching space, discovery space, exploratory space between professor and his or her expertise in the area of knowledge and the students, the recipients of that knowledge. It's a sacred space.
Definitely. Can I say something, not to answer it, but to react to what has been said before? It's tenure protects definitely for academic freedom, but also criticizing the administration. Like we are protected, we are supposed to be protected. The administration or government, usually government policies, depending on the expertise, of course, or if it's in public health or whatever expertise related to policies. I just wanted to mention that.
Also, I would like to add one thing to your question, Aura, to Rima, and that is that it's not just a protected space between teacher and students, but it should be a protected space between colleagues, not only at the same university, but at different universities. In other words, no administration, no administrator should presume to tell a professor either at their own university or at another university what to do and what to think. And that was, in various ways, what happened to me was that people quite outside my university, who should be my colleagues, launched an effort to censor and control me and what I had to say in the field. And that is wrong. That is what cancellation means nowadays, is that your peers gang up on you, so to speak.
Yes.
And tell you what you can and what you cannot do. And that is not acceptable either, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I totally agree. This is like mobbing.
Yes.
I think
yes.
What is the, and here I want to understand, maybe you have insight. What do you think is motivational element that drives your colleagues, your colleagues team or Rima to do what they've done? why a colleague would, aren't there any basic ethical principles of collegiality? Or maybe I'm naive now. So what drives colleague to attack a colleague for having different viewpoint?
I would, if I may, I would say intolerance or thinking that we have the monopoly on the truth and imposing views on others because, you know, how can I say it? When we stop defending principles, like the principle of academic freedom, freedom of expression, the principle of no violence for all, we don't have double standards if we keep reminding ourselves that this should apply to all, respect to all. Now we're having like those ideologies blinding our brains and hearts, but also powerful, like all, it seems that these powerful movements are too powerful and high, like governments maybe, or I don't know whom funding, I mean, universities. So it's like, it's going from the top down and then everywhere, like also like, but I think that's the scariest part. It's institutionalized, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it well, institutionalized, dogmatized, it is scary. That's what I think.
Maybe to bring this to a very specific issue. So in my case, I recently published an article called about the Schenker controversy. And in that article, I showed that my opponent, or my principal opponent, had quoted another scholar in support of his position. I showed that he took out a sentence from within the quote. So you had a sentence and then a ... and then another sentence. And he made it look like this other scholar supported his position. But the sentence in the middle of the quote that he took out completely undercut his whole thesis, and the two following sentences did the same. Now, what I think is that is a form of scholarly fraud, really. Because if you look up many websites on academic integrity, you'll find that they say that you mustn't selectively quote. You have to truly represent what the quoted source said. And in this case, the author did not do that. He did the opposite of that, okay? And I think that that is a fact. That's not a matter of opinion, okay? I don't think it's an interpretive issue. I think it really, as far as one can say that it's an objective problem, it is. It's not subjective. It's not quite like in the hard sciences where you have the issue of 2 + 2 = 4 and not 5, but it's almost on the same level, okay? And I think that we as professors have a responsibility in every case when we're dealing with facts like that to be honest and truthful, even if they don't suit our particular, let's say, viewpoint. And we have also a responsibility to test ideas, you know, to engage in a dialectical relationship with other professors. But that dialectic can only take place in an atmosphere of mutual respect. And that atmosphere of mutual respect has now, in the last, I would say, 2 or 3 years, perhaps even more, but it's been growing stronger and stronger, has been violated by people who seem to think that it's important to deplatform, that's their term, or to silence people who have a different viewpoint. And that's why they wanted to take away the journal that I was supervising along with one other colleague, because they didn't like what the journal was doing. And they felt that it was necessary to deplatform opposite points of view or different points of view. I don't think that's the way forward for real growth of knowledge.
No.
Thank
No,
you.
and I don't think it's a humanistic approach either. I think it's a totalitarian approach.
Absolutely.
And I want to ask Rima, specifically your expertise as psychologist. We are dialectical creatures. We are. And by under-exploring dialectical tensions in a classroom on different levels within different disciplines, we, again, I use second time today word, deprive students of exploring something important about themselves, about subject they learn, about relationships within systems of knowledge. I guess it's, well, I'm trying to do this. My method of teaching is all across dialectical. I just cannot teach otherwise, but I guess it's our individual choices. I guess how I frame the question, Rima, how do we see the psychological damage? So here it is. How you see the psychological damage to students for under-exploring certain, I would say, cognitive dissonances that are, in a way, our oftentimes modus operandi?
I love your question. I think it's getting to levels of being an educational tragedy. To that point, if we are depriving them from creativity, from critical thinking, from all this, so they are paying, or their parents are paying, or they are paying a lot of money to get that education, and they go to university or colleges for that, and they just don't get it. Like if everyone is, as you said earlier, self-censoring, super careful, not allowing them to think that they can have two contradictory ideas at the same time and learn from that, or this opinion, and changing our opinion. Like ideas are flexible and they change, they move. So if we are all like robotic, or I don't know how to say it, like all into political correctness, how can we educate? How can we trigger their brain? How can their brain, you know, like a Christmas tree shine and learn and be stimulated? So I think it is a shame and sad, and it's a tragedy if we don't do something to change what you're describing, if it's pushed to the extreme. I don't know if I answered your question, but I tried.
Can I ask you a question, Rima?
Yeah,
so
sure.
the thing that kind of triggered this attack on you, which invited the administration to persecute you, I think is the right word, involved your statement that you thought that Canada was actually welcoming to immigrants from other countries, and that you personally had not experienced any hostility as an immigrant, even though, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, we had some unforeseen technical difficulties, but we're back here and we'll pick it up from where we left it.
Yes, there was a question.
Okay, my question for Rima was this. Okay, so the thing that really got the whole thing started with you was, you said that as an immigrant to Canada, you did not encounter hostility. On the contrary, you found Canada very welcoming and open, and you did not feel any resistance and so forth, right?
Absolutely.
And people were critical because, okay, especially recently, there was, in Canada, there was a lot of church burnings, and people were angry because the church various churches had oppressed Native peoples, especially children in schools, in residential schools. They'd even gone so far as murdering them. And this was a national embarrassment for Canada, of course. And Canada's history, as we all know, I mean, I learned this when I was growing up in Canada, that, you know, that Canada's history was bloody and full of awful events. Like, for example, in Newfoundland, we learned even when I was a kid, and this was 40, you know, this was 50 years ago, okay? Half a century ago. We learned about the Beothuks in Newfoundland. This was an Indian tribe that was completely annihilated by the British, but also by the Micmacs. Now, this is where we get into the complexities and nuances, all right? It wasn't simply the white British who were massacring the Beothuks. They were being massacred by other Native people. In other words, there was a much more complicated situation where nobody came off with white gloves, believe me, all right? It wasn't just a one-sided thing, and it certainly wasn't simplistic. Certain Native groups allied themselves with the British, others with the French, and they massacred each other without mercy. I mean, the history of Canada is bloody, and there are many, many stains, all right? And so it seems to me that we have to recognize the full truth, the full context, all the nuances, all the complexities there of the history. It's just like in Lebanon. Nobody came out of the Civil War with white hands. Nobody was guiltless, right? It's a very complicated situation, right?
Absolutely.
And anybody who wants to understand it has to be honest and look at all the facts, look at the whole context, the whole picture. And what we have instead of that today with this virtue signaling and political correctness is a gross simplification, and to point out the good guys and the bad guys. And in fact, it's a much more complicated and nuanced situation with a lot of grays as well as blacks.
I totally agree. I agree. If I may, I want to give a quick example in France. Actually, I read it this morning. It's about slavery and history. And it seems that the government there came up with the idea of having that it's a crime against humanity, this slavery that happened from one group to the other, but not considering from Arabs or the Muslim Arab words for other people. So it's only one side, and their point was that they don't want to traumatize the little young French people of Arab origins, or I'm Arab myself, and I find that absolutely ridiculous. Like, we have to, as you said, look at the whole history, whole facts, and let's not to talk about all this in the past. The question was more about Canada and my immigration, but it's just to say that it is a shame when we're one-sided, we don't see the whole picture, like the war in Lebanon, and everyone indeed had blood on his hands, indeed.
Yeah.
There was a famous, Rima, there was a famous book written about Canada's behavior during the Holocaust. The title of the book is None is Too Many. None is too many. In other words, they didn't want to let the Jews come in, the refugees, the Jewish refugees. Sure. When I was growing up in Halifax, so I'm older than you, Rima, and also Laura.
A little bit.
I was about 5 or 6, okay? I wasn't allowed to go to a certain club because Hebrews were still not welcome there, okay? Wow. I very much remember my parents saying that to me, okay? So, and if we go back in Canada's history to before World War II, to the 1930s, there were signs up on the beach in Toronto, okay, on the Lake Ontario, that said no dogs or Jews allowed on the beach, okay? Yes. And that happened, all right? But to say that the whole country was anti-Semitic is also wrong, because there were Jews who were allowed in. There were Jews who were saved one way or another, right? It's a complicated situation. It's not simplistic. You can't condemn the whole country, right? There are different layers. There are different strands. It's a dialectical history. It's complicated. It's nuanced, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And can I come in? So basically, we picking and choosing certain threads from history, just like if we take a polyphonic composition and pick just one voice that fits our comfort zone, and exposing students to that and leaving all other voices, counterpointal voices, out of the picture. So
Well said.
we reduce history, reduce complexity, but yet what the gain is safety, because complexity does not provide safety. Yes, it's often traumatizing. And Rima, you mentioned that students, it's a whole other issue, right? Safe space, right?
Right.
And basically that's, I would say it's a mass damaging thing to truth, because truth is exposure. And often it's a very risky and difficult exposure if we want to see whole picture, right? We need to see all stains, right, out there. So can this process in universities in large being reversed somehow? And Tim, you mentioned in our kind of pre-conversation little exchange, you mentioned post-truth. You coined the term post-truth.
Yes, post-truth.
University. Tim, can you say a few words? I would say partial truth, but you say post-truth.
So in music, we talk about post-tonal music, which means beyond tonal music. And I'm using the word post-truth, which was actually coined, I think, by a friend of mine by the name of Barry Wiener, who's also a Schenker expert. And what we mean by that term, I think, is that the universities are now very dangerously moving beyond the truth, as if the truth doesn't really matter anymore. So in other words, in order to, and the danger here is that they're doing this in order to what other people have called virtue signal. So they want to show that they're morally and ethically on the right side, that they promote, a wide cross-section of people and so-called people of color and so forth. And to do that, they're willing to trample on the truth. That's what's most scary, I think, about this whole thing of post-truth. So in my case with Schenker, who is my area of interest, it has been claimed, I believe falsely, that he was an anti-Semitic Jew, that he was a Nazi sympathizer, and that he was a white supremacist. And all of the sources, unfortunately, I think for the other side, Schenker's diary, his letters, his writings do not support that conclusion. But that doesn't matter anymore, because if you're in a post-truth situation, you're immune to facts. Facts don't matter to you anymore. That's the danger.
Very scary. Absurd. I call this our collectively insane times. I don't have another term to describe that. Why are we doing this to our societies? Why are we doing this to our universities? I think we can reconnect with the truth if we want, even if the mission of a university is, let's say, into this type of social justice or this type of religious whatever or whatever. If we all come back and do like I want to say it in French, prise de conscience, like think and really stop and look in the mirror and say why, what, and it doesn't make any sense. It's, I have no words, sorry, it's so sad.
Well, Rima and team, I made that decision long ago. I remember I started conversation, I was observing myself getting anxious about self-censoring, and I made the decision that I love teaching, I'm passionate about teaching, and I'm going to be very selfish about it in terms, I want to enjoy it. I want to be ecstatic about it. I want to have joy. I want it to be like a psychodrama in a classroom and comedy all together. And self-censoring will deprive me of that full enjoyment of teaching. I won't get kicked out of it. And if I won't get kicked out of it, how my passion will be infectious to my students? It won't.
It won't.
It won't. So we both lose. So I made the decision, and it's strangely thinking about that liberated me.
Bravo.
So I would say the decision is our individual self-liberation and giving ourselves permission to teach the way that fits our professional and creative and passionate integrity, whatever it entails for us. Whether in music, science, or in anything.
So well said, absolutely. If I may, it's not into the classroom, but it's on that blog. That was the philosophy of that Bambi on my personal blog, is that this is the space where I want to enjoy it and be creative and come up with a post every day, and there's no way I'm self-censoring myself. So in a sense, I totally see what you mean. The classroom, of course, like if definitely, and enjoying that teaching, as you said, the classroom when the door is closed or the Zoom is closed, it's our space with the students, learning journey space, definitely.
But also trial and error.
Yes.
The trial and error, when the search for truth involves trial and error, right? And it's like the whole journey. It's not a straight highway.
No, and it could be done with, I think, a concern for not safe space, but how can I say it? If I may give an example, my sister told me she taught a course with Texas, Dubai, and Beirut at the same time in journalism, I think. And what they did is something called impact after the teaching, looking at the video to see if the answers of the questions of the students were answered, if everyone felt comfortable. I liked that approach. It's not like safe space trigger, but it's a nice way of saying it, like just making sure that everyone was comfortable. So I said, well, why not? So we can be creative, we can try things.
Well, if we have basic ground of respect for human beings in front of us, that's all.
Exactly.
And the students are human beings, just like us. That's all we need.
Exactly.
Tim, are you optimistic? I hate using words optimistic, pessimistic, but do you see any light of hope that things might start shifting or turning around?
I'm not really sure at this point. I'm waiting to see, okay? I'm not sure. I'm hopeful. I mean, when I see people like Rima, it gives me hope too, obviously. I'm very, I come from a very different background than Rima does. What I like about Rima and what draws me to her is that she thinks in Arabic, for example, which is very different from me. I was brought up Jewish, and I actually went to a yeshiva for a while and studied the Torah and the Talmud and all the commentaries in Hebrew, in Israel too. And one of the things that I learned from that experience is a real attention to text and to details. You know, really examining text carefully and critiquing them. You know, a lot of Jewish tradition is also dialectical. The Talmud is very dialectical. And I think that the wonderful thing about Rima and me together is that we come from almost opposite sides of the equation in a certain sense, but our humanity and our willingness to be honest and to think and not to take quick decisions and to want to be together and coexist is very, very important. And I think it's important also not only academically, but politically, because we all have to learn in this world how to coexist and respect one another.
Exactly, and learn from one another, and that shared humanity, as you said, it moves my heart. Thank you.
And I'm, despite being Israeli, I'm a bad Jew who never goes to synagogue, who soaked and absorbed into myself all depth and tragic dissonance of Russian literature. So here you go. I'm adding to the pilaf.
So
but
cute.
You see, the beautiful thing here is that all three of us, in spite of our different backgrounds, understand the importance of Socrates. Okay.
Yes.
When I was growing up, I read Socrates' dialogues, right? And I learned so much from reading those dialogues and understanding dialectical thinking. And also, I think our sufferings, when I listened to Rima talking on her when she was interviewed by Eric Serboni recently, you know, Rima's experiences in the civil wars in Lebanon and seeing all these dead people and suffering, you know, that this, hopefully you learn from these things, Rima. I mean, I hope that all Lebanese people and all Israelis will learn from this real suffering, what it means to really suffer.
Exactly.
And then to learn and apply that to achieve a higher level of humanity so that we can find a way to coexist, all of us together, and learn from each other and help each other instead of hurting each other. That seems to me to be the best thing that you asked me what I hope for. That's what
that will be the best fugue ever composed.
That's the real hope. That's yeah, indeed.
So not only in academia, but in the world at large, that I think our universities should also be beacons of hope for solving our problems instead of making accusations. That's another bad trend in our universities today, is that terrible accusations are made that are very often false. And people are become very, very polarized and very closed-minded. And what we need to do is the opposite. We need to open our minds. We need to look at the other person as a human being who suffered also, and learn from suffering to try to achieve a higher coexistence and a higher respect for everybody, an honorable peace for all involved. It's not easy, but it's necessary.
So well said. Thank you.
Well, we're doing it. We're embarking on a journey.
I mean, I wish in an ideal world, I would like to learn Arabic. For example, I do know Hebrew to a certain degree. I'm not nearly as good at it as I should, but I know enough Arabic, I mean, enough Hebrew that when I listen to Arabic with subtitles, I can hear the resonances of Hebrew. I can hear the cognate words in Arabic.
True, and some words are exactly similar, some words, but also when I hear Yiddish, I understand, like there was a movie, I think A Stranger Among Us, an old movie, I understood it all without reading the subtitles because there's the German part that I do understand, but there's that emotional language that is probably like some Hebrew, maybe some Russian. I don't know what precisely, but yes, that there's something you understand it without understanding it. You get it.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think it will be fun to actually do session with Hebrew and Arabic and see what we can derive
Yes.
out of it. I think
Now that would be you and Aura, because my Hebrew's not good enough.
no, because I really want to talk about intuitions. It's like how much we know and know intuitively, but we don't know until we know, until the moment comes. So I really would like to explore that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe through Hebrew and Arabic, but that's another time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tim, you will be the audience.
Okay, I will be happy to do that.
Okay, thank you both so much. We just started this conversation. There is so much to say. And Tim, last time, today is the second time we meet, and I hope, Rima, we will continue. I would like to build continuity on this channel instead of just having thousands of guests, but having kind of, I envision it like salon.
Oh, lovely.
Like people who always come back, with whom we can continue where we left it. Sort of like team and variations. And my hope is certainly to continue with Tim. We have unfinished business. Tim, I remember. And Rima, with you. Absolutely.
Well, I'm honored. It's what I'm honored. Bravo. Please keep it up. And anytime, I'm here.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank
you so much. Thank you. Wow.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye, both
Okay,
of you.
bye.
Bye.
Bye.